All right, we're back. Today, I want to talk about this gentleman right here, Mr. Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA. And the reason I want to talk about him is because I honestly think it's time the NBA needs to just move on from this guy. I mean, it's just the last 5 to 10 years from him have been so bad. Well, I'll say more specifically the last 5 years, although there have been sort of issues since he took the role of NBA commissioner in 2014. So he's been in the role for about 12 years now, and he obviously took over for David Stern, who was the longtime commissioner of the NBA, commissioner for decades. David Stern was the one that sort of built the league around Magic and Bird, and then you had Jordan and Kobe and Shaq, and he was briefly the commissioner when LeBron was in his early years as well. But the last, again, 12 years have been under the guidance of Adam Silver. And Adam Silver's tenure started off with quite a bang. And that was because he had this situation thrust upon him, which was the racist comments of Clippers owner Donald Sterling, having been recorded by one of Donald Sterling's girlfriend and then released to the media, right? So there was this media story that came out that rapidly became, pretty widespread, which was a recording of Donald Sterling making racist comments about Magic Johnson. Right, and it's not like it was like heinous obscenities, but there were racist tones to what he was saying and sort of stuff like, he was asking his girlfriend, who had been seen at a game with Magic Johnson or something. He was asking his girlfriend, why do you need to be hanging around that black man or something? It was just something like that was obviously racist and clearly showed his perspective, but it's not like he was saying, racist obscenities and just being, horribly overtly racist. But nonetheless, became a big media story, and Adam Silver was sort of forced to act. And it was pretty notable because it was within like the first few months or first year of Adam Silver's tenure. I think maybe the 2013-2014 season was Silver's first season as commissioner, and I think this maybe happened right after the season. Again, I can't exactly remember, but he was forced to sort of address it, and this was the press conference in which he did so. So I would say his most famous press conference as commissioner.
Are deeply offensive and harmful. That they came from an NBA owner only heightens the damage and my personal outrage. Sentiments of this kind are contrary to the principles of inclusion and respect that form the foundation of our diverse, multicultural, and multi-ethnic league. I am personally distraught that the views expressed by Mr. Sterling came from within an institution that has historically taken such a leadership role in matters of race relations and caused current and former players, coaches, fans, and partners of the NBA to question their very association with the league. To them, and pioneers of the game like Earl Lloyd, Chuck Cooper, Sweetwater Clifton, the great Bill Russell, and particularly Magic Johnson, I apologize. Accordingly, effective immediately, I am banning Mr. Sterling for life from any association with the Clippers organization or the NBA.
Okay, so number one, I just want you to think about how crazy it is. Just a few things. Remember, this is 2014, totally different time. And you can make your own assessment as to how it was different. But just think about a billionaire owner facing any kind of consequences at all. I mean, it just seems foreign to today's world. And also just the fact that such a high price is being paid and such a serious tone being taken over, this old school billionaire having made mildly racist comments, right? Which obviously is terrible, and kudos to the NBA for getting rid of the guy. But just think about today. Like, I feel like this wouldn't even be a story, right? Or it'd be like some story, and that's it. We'd just move on, right? It's just a totally different climate. You just think about how things have changed and shifted. It's just kind of crazy. Like, you look at the serious, breathless tone with which he's taking this, and it is ultimately sort of these just. I mean, I don't want to say mildly racist, but again, racist comments, not the absolute worst racism you've ever heard, right? But and something I guess the way I should put it is, it's something you might expect from this old, rich, calcified rich dude that's owned the Clippers for 40 years. He's like some slumlord from LA, right? So it's kind of incredible to me, this was a huge press conference. You can hear the cameras flickering. You can see how seriously this is being taken. But anyway, this was the first sort of big thing that Adam Silver had to deal with, and indeed this response to it. I mean, this granted him this halo and this shield right off the bat as commissioner that made him almost impervious to negative press about the NBA. Like, he became such a media darling right away because of this press conference that, like, they've extended him this decade of mistakes that he's made, which I'm going to go into a few of them here. They've extended him this rope, this insane rope, where, like, they have just given him pass after pass with some of these insane moves. Just the other day, or this is so this is 4 or 5, within the last week, the NBA decided to address an issue that came up this season that was a horrible issue. But it's been an issue forever, but this season it was so bad and so overt, and that is the issue of tanking. And so they came up with this proposal to try to fix tanking, which I'll get to in a second. But the reason they did this again is because the tanking was so bad this season. And one game that kind of really alerted everyone to the situation more broadly with how bad tanking was, and also just became sort of a symbol for the season of tanking, which was this past season, was this game between the Memphis Grizzlies and the Utah Jazz, in which both of them went into this game. It was a late in the season game, right? And they're both bottom of the league teams, so they're both vying for the lowest spot in the league, which sounds odd, but the reason they're doing so is because they're trying to be the worst team in the league so that they can get the best chance at getting the highest draft pick and getting the best player in the next year's draft. Now, the way the NBA draft works is very convoluted, but basically there's a lottery system for the 14 worst teams in the league, where the lower you are, the higher percentage chance you get, or the more chances you get at picking the ball out of the lottery machine, that means you get the first pick, right? So they're trying to up their odds that they're going to get the first pick and be able to take their pick out of what is promising to be an extremely talented draft class coming up, which was one of the reasons that tanking was so bad this past season. The draft is so deep, and there's so many good players. So teams are trying to entrench themselves in that that larger percentage bracket of the lottery so that they can make sure they get one of the best players. And so this particular game between Memphis and Utah was just particularly horrible. Memphis used only 6 players all game. 4 of them topped 40 minutes. None of those 6 players were on the Grizzlies' full-time regular season rotation. So they used only 6 players the entire game. Most of them played the entire game, so 4 of them were played over 40 minutes. So it was mainly like a small core of players, and none of those players were on the Grizzlies' full-time regular season rotation. So they were none of the players that the Grizzlies, typically played in their regular season games. And I'm pretty sure if I've read into some of these details correctly, it was like they were literally signing free agent players like off the street for like 10-day contracts at the end of the season, so they could play like On Memphis, the group was essentially G League level two ways and fringe depth, some of whom were barely on the team's official roster. Utah's lineup was a mix of very young guys and deep bench players, but even that bad group was good enough to blow out Memphis 47-101, which highlighted how bad they're. So essentially, both teams in this game were trying to lose, and it was so apparent to everybody that it was actually like offensive. Like the way tanking has always worked is you mix in some bad players, you sit a star, you don't play your stars, you mix in some bad players, and you just make your lineup to where there's a high probability you're going to lose most of the games that they go out and play against a typical NBA team, right? But what happened was this year, so many teams started tanking, trying to get a piece of this upcoming draft, that you had to like actively make your team even worse than bad in order to like out tank the other team, right? Like you couldn't just make your team mildly bad and then like on the whole over the course of 30 games you just expect to lose most of them against average NBA teams, because you couldn't count on playing average NBA teams. So many of the teams were tanking that it was like you ended up in a lot of these games where you were tanking. It was like a tank fest. You were playing a tanking team was playing a tanking team, which is exactly what happened here. Both teams were trying to lose because both had a high incentive, especially in this particular game where if either team lost, they were going to gain like meaningful percentage points in terms of like they were going to go down enough in their league rankings to where they were going to gain meaningful percentage points in that draft lottery system, right? So tanking becomes this huge problem this year. It's tied to the draft in the way that I described. So the other day, the NBA comes out with this. This is an ESPN article, and let me just make sure you get okay. This is an ESPN article from Shams Charania, who's obviously the big NBA insider. NBA eyes new anti-tanking proposal for draft lottery. So this is sort of the NBA's move. Is they're very reactive, right? They wait for everyone to start freaking out about something, or they wait for some horribly embarrassing game like this Memphis versus Utah game, and then they're like, "Oh, we got this new anti-tanking proposal." The problem is Adam Silver or his executives, whoever he's got around him, his advisors, they all apparently are just fucking morons. Because they come out with shit like this. Listen to this. As if the lottery system, with its balls popping out of a machine and percentage chances, as if that isn't convoluted enough. This is the proposal that Adam Silver floated to the media the other day. The 3-2-1 lottery, so it's called the 3-2-1 lottery. The 3-2-1 lottery proposal, named to represent the number of lottery balls per team, would expand the lottery from 14 to 16 teams. Teams that do not qualify for the playoffs or play-in tournament but stay out of the relegation zone, spots 4 through 10, would receive 3 lottery balls each. Teams with a bottom 3 record, the relegation area... Wait, what? Teams with a bottom 3 record, the relegation area, would have only 2 lottery balls but have a floor of the number 12 pick. And the rest of the 13 lottery teams could fall as far. Oh my god, my brain hurts. I am literally confused. Like I thought I had read through this before and mildly understood it, and now I just realized it's even more insane than I thought. Listen to this. Teams that do not qualify for the playoffs or play-in tournament but stay out of the relegation zone, spots 4 through 10, would receive 3 lottery balls each. Team with a bottom 3 record, the relegation area. So there's something called the relegation zone and also something called the relegation. Dude, this makes no sense. How do they think normal fans or even highly interested fans are going to make any sense of this? Forget about how convoluted and insane it is. You're expanding the lottery from 14 to 16 teams. Am I crazy? Or does that not just make it so that more teams could now see themselves as a potential tanking team? Like, let's say if there's 14 lottery slots, as there is now, right? then if you're team 15 or 16 or 17, you might be thinking that you want to tank a bit to get down into that lottery to at least have a chance at the number one pick. If you expand the lottery to 16 teams, now your window is going to be bigger, or now your window is going to be higher up in the rankings for teams that would potentially consider tanking. Like, am I dumb? Or does that literally just make it so now you're basically what you're saying is, because think about it, the round one of the playoffs, at least 2 or 3 series of round one of the playoffs every single year, there is like an 8 seed playing a 1 seed, and the 8 seed has no chance of winning, and they just get like swept. Like there's almost no reason for them to even show up. Like the Oklahoma City Thunder just swept the Phoenix Suns in the NBA playoffs. The Phoenix Suns, under this new system, they might have considered tanking even though they were going to make the playoffs, right? Or be a play-in team and potentially make the playoffs. Under this system, if you're going to allow 16 teams into the lottery, you're literally now saying, okay, well, you might have potential playoff teams instead deciding to tank their season and rob their fans of playoff games. This is so insane. Like, I don't even want to keep reading this. Like, I will just for comedy's sake. The numbers 9 and 10 play-in seeds in each conference receive 2 lottery balls each. And the loser of the 7-8 play-in games received 1 lottery ball each. Previously, the league drew odds for only teams with the bottom 4 records in the league, while the other 10 lottery teams were then ordered by inverse record. Under this proposal, all 16 teams would be in the drawing. Oh my god, so I'm right! Under this proposal, all 16 teams would be in the drawing. So if you just make that 16th... If you just make that 16-team group, as in the worst 16 teams in the league... This is insane. Then you will have a chance at getting the number 1 pick. So the Phoenix Suns that just got swept out of the playoffs in the first round by the Oklahoma City Thunder, under this system, they would have probably been smarter just tanking to try to get to at least that 16 spot, the low 16, like the worst 16 teams in the league. They would have been smarter to try to grab that spot to try to get a chance at the number 1 pick. And like if you're sitting there thinking that the number 1 pick should not be that highly valued, just think about some of the number 1 picks over the last 5 years. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, NBA champion last year. Luka Doncic, huge, highly coveted player. You just look at the number 1 picks or the high draft picks. They do end up being high impact players. And they're some other ones are escaping me right now. Victor Wembanyama. Which actually I don't know. Was he a number 1 overall pick? Yeah, I think he was for the Spurs. Yeah, because that was after they tanked. And that's the other thing too, is even good teams are like good, smartly run, responsible teams like the Spurs. They even tanked to get themselves a number 1 pick because it's totally incentivized. It makes total sense. If you don't have a chance to be in the playoffs, you should tank because you can get that. Because there's only 5 players on the floor in the NBA. If you get that one good guy, he can make all the difference. LeBron, KD, Russell Westbrook. You just think of the guys. If you can get that player, it can totally change your franchise. So it's like you are so incentivized to try and tank. And this insanity that they've just come up with, like, I wonder who approved this. Like, I want to see the room that they were sitting in when they all decided that this was a good idea. It's just insane. Okay, so, but the funny thing is it's actually not all that surprising because the NBA, they have this knack for creating extremely dumb rules and making little tweaks that don't actually make any sense. Another one is this 65 game rule that they did, which, this year proved, as it has many other years, was just kind of a dumb rule. So the 65 game rule is a rule that addresses the issue of load management. And load management is this concept that players have come around to over the last 5 to 10 years, where they are of the mindset that they don't want to play, they only want to play, let's say, like 60-70% of the games throughout the season in order to build up that banked rest that allows them to extend their career like more years so that they have more of like an earning window, right? So like instead of playing 80 games a year for 10 years, you only play 40 games for 20 years and you can earn for double the time, right? Because the NBA is still paying you. NBA contracts are not about how many games you play per season. Some of them may have minimums, but like the players will still get the full value of the contract even if they only play, let's say, like 60%, 70% of their games, right? So the NBA obviously identifies this as a huge issue because fans are showing up to games and then the player that they assumed was going to be there and indeed paid money for the ticket thinking that that player was going to be there ends up not playing, right? Or is just randomly out, rest, load management, and so the fans get screwed. And this started to become like a pretty hot button issue a few years back, which is why they instituted Adam Silver instituted the 65 game rule. And it's kind of an interesting issue because the thing about load management is it was never really an issue while David Stern was commissioner in like the Jordan era, the Kobe Shaq era, the Bird Magic era. For whatever reason, those players just never really came around to this idea that they could extend their careers by resting during the season. They always just sort of played the games, even though they could have probably employed some sort of similar strategy that you see nowadays in terms of load management. But I just thought this was an interesting bit from Michael Jordan addressing the subject that I had heard on NBC. And it's just sort of what you want to hear as an NBA fan. Um, and it's, it sort of embodies, it's emblematic of that era of the NBA that we all love. And it just harkens back to the mindset of those players that made it great. So you can hear what he had to say.
Such a hot button in the NBA.
How I know you were going to talk about that one?
Because you played 80 games a lot. A lot. You played 82. What do you think of when you hear the term load management thrown around?
It shouldn't be needed, first and foremost. I never wanted to miss a game because it was an opportunity to prove. It was something that I felt like, the fans are there to watch me play. I want to impress that guy way up on top who probably worked his ass off to get a ticket or to get money to buy the ticket.
You really cared about the guy who sat in the top deck at the Palace in Auburn Hills to watch you when you came to Detroit?
Yeah, because I know he's probably yelling at me, and I want to shut him up. He's calling me all kinds of names. I definitely want to shut him up.
Right.
See, it's hard not to love Jordan because he just knows how to build that mythology. And I don't doubt that he had a soft spot in his heart for the guy sitting up in the 50th row that worked his butt off to get a ticket. And I do think that sentiment is somewhat lost on these players. They are a bit spoiled. They're a bit more entitled, right? They're making a ton more money, and they have more of a me first attitude, right? So you just hearing that from him, it sort of just reminds you of a different NBA, right? It's kind of funny. So back to the 65 game rule, which was the rule that Adam Silver instituted to try to curb this load management. And I want to read a little bit from this article from Pounding the Rock, SB Nation, written by Marilyn Dubinsky, who addressed this issue and sort of explained why it's not really a great rule. The NBA didn't like the load management, especially when those games were on national television, so they created an incentive to keep stars on the court. If a player doesn't appear in at least 65 games, he is not eligible for regular season awards in all NBA defensive teams, which can directly impact a player's contract extension or built-in bonuses. Thus the rule was born, but here's the problem. It addresses the wrong issue, The NBA can point to load management as the leading problem towards the stars missing games, since that releases them from blame. But it's not. It's more injuries. As we stand, several MVP candidates are at risk of or will miss the 65-game minimum due to injury in the last couple of weeks. Cade Cunningham suffered a collapsed lung, Luka Doncic a strained hamstring, and Victor Wembanyama a bruised rib just last night. Nikola Jokic is also towing the line after a knee injury early in the season sidelined him for 16 straight games. So you have Cade Cunningham, Detroit Pistons, who's currently leading his team through the playoffs. You have Victor Wembanyama, who's the biggest sensation in the league and seriously blew up this year. Luka Doncic, who's one of the most coveted players in the league, the star of the Lakers. And Nikola Jokic, who's a two-time champion and been MVP multiple times and still extremely dominant. These are your basically your top candidates for MVP. And they're either barely going to be eligible or ineligible because of injuries. Right? So you have this 65 game rule that was intended to be about curbing load management, And now it's punishing your best players in the league from getting their due rewards because they were injured. How that wasn't foreseen by the commissioner of the NBA, who, by the way, is a Duke grad, which just goes back to my longtime theory that we're all morons. Like, you can have graduated from Duke, Harvard, Yale, whatever, Stanford, you're still a moron. And indeed, a lot of those guys that graduated from those universities can sometimes prove to be even bigger morons than the rest of us that didn't go anywhere near those places, right? But you just wonder how these, these very highly paid executives and, indeed executives with a huge responsibility to steward this league, namely the commissioner, Adam Silver, came up with this insane rule without considering that it was going to end up punishing their biggest stars if they happen to be injured, by not allowing them to be eligible for their due awards, all NBA defensive teams or MVP, which, as stated here, can directly impact a player's contract extension or built-in bonuses. I mean, it's just insane. It's just such a lack of foresight. It just indicates that you're just spitballing and not really thinking things through. And then obviously this insane tanking thing they came out with the other day too. But it's just, there's so much more to Adam Silver, and I just want to touch on a few other things here. So this is the other thing that sort of plagues Adam Silver's tenure and has really become sort of this menace to him over the last few years, which is the massive affiliation with the gambling companies, FanDuel, DraftKings, Fanatics, whatever it is. And to be clear, I don't blame Adam Silver for sports gambling, right? Like, sports gambling is here, and it's going to be adjacent to major sports for the foreseeable future, right? It's just how it's going to be. Whether Silver was commissioner or freaking Mike Florio here on your screen was commissioner, or this dude or that dude or whoever, or me, it doesn't matter. Gambling's going to be part of major professional sports. There's no way to hide from it anymore. So do I fault him for getting into sponsorship deals and getting into bed with these gambling companies? No, not at all. I think any commissioner would have done the exact same thing. And indeed, pretty much every single one of them has across the other leagues. But here's the problem, or here's what happened, is they obviously have had over the last few years some gambling issues pop up, right? And so he's always going to be highly scrutinized for having made these highly lucrative deals with the gambling companies, got in bed with them. When these gambling scandals crop up, Silver is going to be highly scrutinized at how he handles it, right? He doesn't want ever for there to be an appearance that he's sort of acting in a way that is favorable to the gambling companies rather than preserving the integrity of the league, right? And unfortunately, it's already seemed to sort of happen that way. And what I'm referring to is this case of this issue with Terry Rozier, who was busted by the FBI for gambling impropriety. And indeed, I think just a few days ago, actually formally indicted on different charges related to this gambling scandal. Well, the problem with this is that prior to him being arrested by the FBI, the NBA had actually looked into his gambling activity, had been sort of tipped off by the sports books, the same sports books that took the information to the FBI, or ended up becoming the evidence for the FBI. They brought this to the NBA prior to it becoming this federal thing, and the NBA essentially cleared Rozier and indeed allowed a trade to go through between the Charlotte Hornets and the Miami Heat, in which Rozier, after having been investigated by the NBA for this betting impropriety, was cleared and then allowed to be traded to the Heat. So, and then obviously the FBI ended up arresting him, which then called into question the NBA's investigation, as they had cleared him, right? So the commissioner was interviewed one night in the midst of this scandal having broken by Cassidy Hubbard on one of the Prime Video game nights in the regular season. And what he said was just kind of wishy-washy, and I wasn't really buying it. So Silver then was reminded that the NBA had cleared Rozier after its own investigation. What do you make of that decision now amid the FBI's allegations against him? Hubbard asked. So what happened was, because bets were placed through legal betting companies, they picked up aberrational behavior around a particular game in March of 23. And so that was brought to our attention by the regulators and the betting companies. We then looked into that situation and we were very transparent about it. And while there was that aberrational betting, we frankly couldn't find anything. Terry at the time cooperated. He gave the league office his phone. He sat down for an interview, and we ultimately concluded that there was insufficient evidence, despite that aberrational behavior, to move forward. We then worked directly with the law enforcement, as they said at the press conference, that the league has been cooperating. So that was obviously over 2 years ago. So the federal government has subpoena power, can threaten to put people in jail, can do all kinds of things that a league office can't do. Okay, that's true, but also a league office has a way lesser standard or burden of proof, right? Like, the league office it's not like a court of law where it has to be proven above like a certain standard, right? Like, I think in most courts it's beyond a reasonable doubt or something like that, right? And then civil courts it's like more probable than not, I think, is the standard. The NBA's standard is it's whatever they want it to be. And you can even remember this from the NFL, a number of years back with the Ray Rice scandal, where the commissioner just kind of like after the 2-game suspension and then the backlash from the public, the commissioner just took Ray Rice out of the picture by putting him on the commissioner's exempt list, which meant he wasn't going to be playing, which was sort of the result the public wanted, right? And it wasn't like a suspension. It was just basically like a way for the NFL to just get him out of the way while they sort of figured out what to do, right? And it wasn't a violation of any rights or anything, because the NFL has the power to do that. So according to their bylaws, the NFL had the right to put players on a commissioner's exempt list. Well, I don't know much about the NBA and their bylaws, but my guess is they don't have some really strict fairness standard, right? Like, if you have aberrational betting behavior that the sports books are coming to you with, saying this looks odd, it appears Terry Rozier is doing something funky here, and you're basically saying, well, we don't think it's all that funky. It's, in fairness to Terry, yeah, just, we don't have complete evidence, so he's cleared, right? It's like, no, if the sports books are coming to you with aberrational behavior, I feel like that just number one, that should be disclosed to the public. Like, who's betting on these fucking games besides the public, right? But we never heard a word about it. And indeed, the NBA just sort of cleared him of wrongdoing, which essentially sends a message to everyone that it was just a big mistake. But obviously we find out later that it wasn't. So this whole thing it looked terrible for Adam Silver, because obviously it appeared as if he was sort of just trying to sweep this whole thing under the rug, and wasn't expecting the FBI to sort of blow it up in his face by taking on the investigation themselves and indeed indicting Terry Rozier on federal charges. So another scandal, and that's what you'll notice with Adam Silver's tenure is it just seems to be scandal after investigation after scandal. We're investigating the tanking problem. We're investigating load management. We're investigating, gambling scandals. We're investigating this Kawhi Leonard Clippers Steve Ballmer thing, which I want you to take a look at here. And basically what this is an investigation that Pablo Torre sort of brought to light maybe about a year ago, a little less, maybe half a year ago, where he was able to obtain evidence that Steve Ballmer, the owner of the LA Clippers, was using sort of this other company, this investment vehicle, to funnel money to Kawhi Leonard that was not being counted against his NBA salary cap, right? So he was essentially paying Kawhi Leonard way more than an NBA player is supposed to be paid according to the salary cap. And the reason for doing so, obviously, is to get Kawhi Leonard to come to his team as opposed to going to another team, right? And so Pablo Torre was able to obtain some evidence, and I'll just read from this ESPN article here by Baxter Holmes. The NBA investigation followed a series of reports by Pablo Torre, a podcaster and ESPN contributor, who cited internal documents that showed Ballmer invested $50 million in aspiration through his personal LLC in September 2021. That month, the Clippers also signed a $300 million deal with Aspiration, making the company the first founding partner of the Intuit Dome. So you can see this company that was this LLC Aspiration, that was the company which Ballmer was using to pay Kawhi extra money, was in fact the first founding partner of the Intuit Dome. So this was like this wasn't some unknown little company. Adam Silver would have had to have had knowledge of this, I would say. This is a main sponsor for one of the team's new arenas. I mean, it's hard to believe he wouldn't have had some knowledge of this. 6 months later, Aspiration signed its deal with Leonard. An unnamed employee who purportedly worked for the banking company told Torre that Leonard's sponsorship deal was to circumvent the salary cap. Meaning, again, Ballmer was investing in Aspiration, who was then taking that money and signing deals with Kawhi Leonard to pay him large sums to be, presumably involved in some sort of marketing. While Ballmer said he introduced Leonard to Aspiration, he told ESPN's Ramona Shelburne in September 2025 that he had no knowledge of the deal and denied he directed the company to strike one. Okay, so whether or not, we don't know the outcome of this investigation yet. The NBA is obviously investigating themselves, and Silver said the investigation has been enormously complex. I would say it's likely there are other teams doing this as well, right? Like, what are the odds that Ballmer's the only one of these rich dudes that owns a team that's figured out a way to funnel extra money to players in order to convince them to come to his team, right? Like, I would doubt that he's the only one doing this. So, this could end up being more of a problem than people really realize. Obviously, what it does, the way it eats away at the integrity of the league, is that the competitive fairness is obviously of each team is hingent upon them being held within the framework of the salary cap, which is designed to make it so that like the richest team can't just buy all the best players, right? And outbid all the smaller wallet teams for the best players. Which is how it works in baseball, which is why, the Yankees were able to dominate forever and why the Dodgers dominate now. Just creates these really lopsided rosters. And obviously the other thing that a salary cap does is it prevents the billionaires from competing with each other, which costs them way more money, right? If we all agree we're just going to spend 150 million max, it prevents me from going out and just being like, screw it, I'll just spend 300 mil on this guy. I don't care. I just want him. And then which forces the other owner to be like, no, I'll spend 350 million. And then we just, as billionaires that have unlimited money, we just end up bidding each other up when there's no need, right? We just sign an anti-compete agreement and we save all that money and we just work within the framework of the salary cap. So ultimately it does serve as a way to sort of depress the amount of money that you have to pay the players, which is why you always have labor disputes between management and owners and players, where the players are trying to get, the salary cap raised or taken away. And the owners are always trying to, have a hard cap and, limit the amount of guaranteed money that they have to pay and whatnot. But anyways, that appears not to matter in the NBA because these owners just circumvent the cap and pay whoever the fuck they want, however much they want, right? As we're seeing this evidence from Pablo Torre's show. So another one on the watch of Adam Silver, another investigation he's got to oversee. A lot of investigations he's looking at. But I think the ultimate sort of indictment of Adam Silver has just been the ratings. And obviously the ratings are, one of the main things that the commissioner is responsible for is, ensuring that they're providing an entertaining product and that they're drawing eyeballs to televisions and to screens. So to bring value to the rights holders, right? The broadcast partners, ESPN, NBC, they pay huge money. And you can just go look at the ESPN NBA deal. It's worth, I think a few billion. And, in order to make that few billion worth it, they need to have people watching these games so that they can sell the advertisements. And unfortunately, under Adam Silver's tenure, which I believe his first season was His first was either 2013, 2014, right? But what you'll notice is in this chart, which is from Sports Media Watch, is you'll notice that primetime viewership, which is this line up here, was, you know, experiencing mild growth, but you know, just basically steady, solid, slow growth from, you know, throughout the early 2000s into the early 2010s, right? Adam Silver takes over in 2014, and it's kind of comical. Primetime viewership has basically declined since he took over, right? If you think of 2014, 2015 as his inaugural season as commissioner, well, look, I mean, it's just tanked since then. Almost 50% too. I mean, that's not nothing, right? If you think of its height at, you know, the height of the viewership for primetime games, an average of 112 million viewers, yeah, it's you know, it's down 40, 50, you know, 40% or so. That's huge. And these deals back then, the broadcast deals, they were not cheaper than the ones now, right? The deal signed from whenever it was, I think the ESPN signed a new deal maybe 2016 or so. That TV deal to broadcast the NBA was way more expensive than the one that was signed, or that the one that was in place through these years when the ratings were far higher. So this is somewhat I mean, that's disastrous if you're a rights holder. That type of decline in viewership. I mean, you're hoping when you buy that thing, you're going to get a hockey stick out of it, right? And you're going to grow it into something even bigger than, you know, what this moderate growth throughout the 2000s would suggest. And instead, you've gotten a decline. And the finals viewership is really no different. I mean, you look at, you know, Silver takes over in 2014. You have average nightly viewership of the finals, 15.5 million viewers, a rating of 9.3. 2025 finals, 10.3 million average viewers with a rating of 5.6. So your rating is down 50%. Your rating is down 50%, and your viewership is down 30%. You've gone from 15 million to 10 million average viewers, and you've gone from about a 10. You've gone from about a 10 to about a 5. So you've like halved your rating, and you've lost 30% out of your viewership over the last 10 years since Adam Silver's taken over as commissioner in your NBA finals ratings. So, I mean, if we're just looking, I mean, it's just a laundry list of crap that this guy is overseeing, right? And just as an NBA fan, I just feel like the general sentiment from fans is that the NBA is not as good as it once was, right? So I just think about, like, again, I mentioned Roger Goodell and the Ray Rice scandal. Think about how harsh we are with Roger Goodell and how he manages the NFL. If Roger Goodell had all these different scandals and all these different issues that had basically cropped up under his watch, do we really think he would still be commissioner of the NBA? And if he was, or commissioner of the NFL, and if he was, like, you can't tell me that the media would not be up his ass every single season about all this stuff, nonstop, right? Like, just eating him up over it. You barely hear anyone ask any questions to Adam Silver that are anything but total softballs, total freaking just cotton balls of questions, and not really grilling him on all these issues. Again, I mean, just ignoring this insane proposal he came out with the other day, the 3-1 lottery proposal. I mean, this guy has overseen the worst tanking issue that we've ever seen in the NBA. He's overseen this load management era where, you know, he instituted this disastrous 65 game rule. He's overseen the fusion of the NBA and gambling, which, again, I don't blame him for, but just some of the stinky scandals that have arisen because of that he hasn't handled well. He's overseen this new era of salary cap circumvention, which we know at least one team has engaged in, and they are still investigating, and God knows what he's going to do to punish, you know, to punish billionaire owner Steve Ballmer. I mean, you know. And then, probably worst of all, he's overseen a massive decline in ratings. So, I just, it's kind of amazing to me this guy still has a job. I just think if it were anyone else, if it weren't such a media darling that had started off his career gaining such a halo with the banning of Donald Sterling, I just I feel like he would have been fired already because the media would have been so far up his butt about all this stuff, and they're just not. They just give him a pass on it. But I don't think that can go on much longer because you can't just keep tanking ratings and have a new scandal pop up every year, and have everyone just continue to sort of sweep it under the rug for you and ignore it. Um, if I was the owners, I'd have already been done with the guy. I don't know why they're hanging on to him. He could get anyone to do this job, and he's pretty much just proven to be a failure. So, anyways, hope everyone has a good night.